There are some lawmakers in states like Texas and Arizona trying to pass laws that basically say President Obama could not be on the ballot in 2012 unless he shows his actual birth certificate.
How's Abercrombie doing on his expedition to find the original document with signatures all over it, like all our birth certificates, like this one here, that somebody who was born at the same one day before has all kinds of signatures on it. It's an actual photostat. Don't we want to know if he can find it? And I don't understand why the governor doesn't just say, snap it up, who's ever over there in the Department of Records, send me a copy right now. And why doesn't the president just say, send me a copy right now? Why doesn't Gibbs and Axelrod say, let's just get this crappy story dead?
He wants to have a couple of his cabinet officials investigate what legally they can do to sort of put out more documentation to prove once and for all his belief that President Obama, in fact, was born here in Hawaii and is eligible to be U.S. president. Basically, push back on the birthers.
Well, let's see how hard they can push back. Good morning. I'm Bulldog Brian Tilton here on Bulldog Live on the Pulse. 1-866-823-1077. Broadcasting all across New Hampshire. And this is a story that has gone across the globe, hasn't it? Gone across the country. You know, Chris Matthews, who you just heard from there on MSNBC just the other night, was railing on and on about, you know, the birther movement. And, you know, he says, I'm an enemy of the birthers. But it sounds like he was conceding that President Obama needs to release his original 1961 typewritten birth certificate, which is an issue that has been talked about many times and we'll be talking about here this morning with Andy Martin of ContrarianCommentary.com. He's the executive editor there, and we've talked to him several times over the last couple of years because he has been the only one to go to Hawaii and actually do some investigation into this and has filed a couple of lawsuits in order to get the birth certificate revealed. Now, why is this becoming an issue today? Well, a couple of reasons, because Andy Martin will tell you why in just a couple of moments himself. But the governor of Hawaii, the newly elected Democratic governor, is saying that he will do whatever he can to put more information out there so that he can put this issue to rest once and for all. And, well, we'll see if that issue will be put to rest once and for all. I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing, it's an issue that's not going away. Because if you were able to see any of that stuff that Chris Matthews was putting out there with two stooges, Democratic stooges, you know, one being from the Chicago Tribune and another Washington operative, you would have certainly seen that 58% of Americans believe that he was born in this country, with about 42% believing that he was not. Now, let's break that down by the population of America. We have 305 million Americans, right? You are talking roughly 100 million Americans who have doubts about whether Barack Obama is indeed constitutionally eligible to hold the office of the President of the United States. Now, the birther movement, well, that can be made up of many people. And I'm sure I will be accused of being one of them, and that's okay, because I, too, would like to see the original 1961 typewritten birth certificate. So, as I have promised, Andy Martin of ContrarianCommentary.com, who's been on this show quite a few times and who has a very important announcement to make today, he's been following this issue and can provide us with a lot of insight. And, Andy, it is a pleasure to meet you in person. How are you today?
Oh, my God, it's my pleasure, too. It's really great to be here in New Hampshire and, of course, to be in studio and be in Concord for an announcement. But we're letting you and your audience get a little bit of a leg up. I'm going down to the Legislative Office Building, and I'm going to be announcing that I'll run in the primaries in the Republican Party for a president here in New Hampshire and across the country, in Iowa, South Carolina, and in every state where we can generate support, basically as a birther candidate. And, you know, some people call me the king of the birthers, and there's a little background to that because I have a certain sense of humor about all of these things. And the reality is that as a king, I preside over an unruly kingdom. So it's not like I have secret police that can go out and enforce orthodoxy. They don't exist, nor would they exist. But the problem you have is that this movement is amorphous, but it has had a very tremendous effect in the 2010 elections. Because when you doubt the legitimacy of the leader, it undermines the Democratic Party. And I think this is what's dawned on Chris Matthews and perhaps Anderson Cooper and some of these other liberal cogs. I believe that the pressure is building for a release. And I believe it's coming from the Clinton camp, actually, as much from the anti-Obama camp. I think they would like to push him out, and they have grabbed the birther issue because there's a ready-made constituency of 100 million people.
Sure, right, exactly. And, we were told by Anderson Cooper and others that this issue is dead and buried and gone. What is that truthsomething.org?
Yeah.
They kept saying, oh, no, this issue is done. We put it to rest. Here's the birth certificate. And I looked right down in the lower right-hand corner or lower left-hand corner because I saw your movies and your presentations on your websites where it points out that this is a laser copy. Did they have laser printers in 1961?
Only in Obama land. Only in Obama. Maybe he's like Al Gore. I mean, Al Gore invented the internet. Maybe Barack Obama's mother and father invented the laser printer. Here's the point. He's made it an issue. You're one of my regular readers, and of course I've been on your show many times. Mm-hmm. And I predicted right on this station, actually, in early 2009, after he was sworn in, that this issue would keep building and that it would reach a crescendo at his worst moment. Well, that's pretty good prognostication, I would say. So I came to New Hampshire, first in the nation primary. I'm the first candidate to announce formally as a Republican Party candidate. And I'm going to have a tremendous impact on the presidential election. Not because I'm the front runner. I mean, clearly at this point I'm not. I'm back in the crowd there somewhere. But I'll be driving the agenda within the Republican Party. And by the way, I'm not just a single issue candidate. I mean, yes, I think Obama should release the birth certificate, but more important, he should also release the college records. Did he get affirmative action? Did he represent himself as a Muslim student to get preferential access? Who paid? Who supported him for Harvard Law School? We know that Khalid al-Mansour was apparently in this group that was pushing for Obama to go to Harvard Law School. Did Saudi money pay for Barack Obama to go to Harvard Law School indirectly through Khalid al-Mansour? We don't know any of this. Now, you couldn't put a kid on the University of New Hampshire gridiron before the NCAA would apply all kinds of restrictions.
Yep.
I'd like to know if the Saudi royal family actually paid for Barack Obama's law school education through Khalid al-Mansour. There's a lot more to this. Now, my presidential pop quiz for your audience and for my readers today is, how many times have the liberal news media buried the issue of the birth certificate and said, it's done, we've got it, we've seen it, been there, done that? Over and over again, they say it's gone, and it keeps building. And I'm going to build, finally, the birthers. And by the way, the birthers is an invented term that was created by the liberal news media. And, of course, being part of the media but not the liberal media, I said, well, let's take it. It's a pretty good shorthand term, that some flack at CBS or NBC dreamed up. And let's take it as our own. We'll kind of steal their creativity. So as I say, I may be the king of the birthers, but it's an unruly kingdom. I personally believe he was born in Hawaii.
Which is why you've been to Hawaii
Exactly.
with your investigations and your 2 lawsuits.
If there was evidence that I could present in a court of law that he was born in Kenya, I would. But I haven't seen it. But there are people, including my own mother, who passionately believes he was born in Kenya, that believe he was born in Kenya. Now, there are all kinds of issues coming around this whole episode because what I believe is that Obama isn't hiding the fact of his birth in Hawaii. I mean, that's what I think. He's hiding information on that long form that would be embarrassing. There are a number of things there could be. Where it lists father's religion, it may say Muslim. Status of the parents, it may list Barack Hussein Obama, or it may not. We don't know. And there's a lot of relentless lying that goes on in the liberal media. Now, I call David Corn, a left-wing operative. Mother Jones. I mean, if you were any more left than that, you'd fall into the San Andreas Fault in California. I mean, that's left of. I mean, they make the Democratic Party look like conservatives. He says, there's addresses where they show a birth certificate, and it must be a conspiracy that they put this in the paper 47 years ago. He's never been to that address. I have. I've been to Honolulu. I've investigated this. Barack Hussein Obama, the father, never lived at that address. That was a phony address. So why would a married man list an address for the birth of his child that wasn't the correct address.
Well, and I was reading from another publication today, actually. They were looking into that issue of the addresses because, as someone pointed out on a Facebook posting, how you get into these things online, too. And he says, there was an announcement in the newspaper. I said, anybody can write anything in the newspaper. That doesn't mean you're qualified to be president of the United States. But what is it? WorldNet Daily, who's also been following this issue from a number of points, they were pointing out the addresses and saying that Barack Obama Sr. did not live at that address that was printed in the newspaper.
Well, they're pulling that right off my research because I've been there taking pictures. The problem with my Hawaii research is that there's more of it than you can literally absorb. But yes, I went to that address. I took pictures in front of it, and his father lived somewhere else. Now, the building where his father lived was closer to the University of Hawaii, and as near as we can tell, he never lived with his so-called wife. Now, maybe they do that in Kenya. The big man lives in one hut and the little woman lives in the other hut. But I've never heard of a marriage in America where the husband lives in one location and the wife lives across town with mom and dad. So there's some real questions about what's missing there. Religion, marital status. Doctor, my personal belief, now I want to be sure your audience doesn't get confused because we've got a worldwide audience today.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe he was born in a hospital. He's tried to claim Kapiolani Medical Center, and maybe she went into the clinic there or something, or she was a patient. But my belief is that he wasn't born in a hospital and that he was not attended by a physician, that he was attended to by a midwife, and that the paperwork is opaque or missing, and that's why he's hiding it. You see, he's hiding the gaps. Let's put it this way. When and if this birth certificate comes out, and if it doesn't say Kapiolani and it doesn't say Dr. Wuzmazil, that's going to fan the other wing of the birther movement, which is the Kenya wing. They'll say, well, see, it's all missing
right,
because it didn't happen in Hawaii. So that's why, as the king of the birthers, we are the ultimate locus and home of diversity of opinion. You can believe what you want as long as you believe that Barack Obama, the President of the United States, should tell the truth to the American people. So that's my campaign. My campaign doesn't say he was born here or he was born there. It says reduce the facts, tell the truth to the American people. If you want our confidence, if you want our young men and women, our sons and daughters, our brothers and sisters, our nephews and nieces to die for your policies, we have to trust you. And the first element of trust in a leader is knowing who he is. Now, admittedly, if somebody wanted your birth certificate or the person in the front office, that would be private. That's what the law was intended to. It was intended to prevent identity theft. It wasn't intended to prevent the President of the United States from claiming it's all private. So Neil Abercrombie is full of Hawaiian pineapple. And you know what happens when you eat too much pineapple? And that's exactly what's going to happen to Governor Abercrombie because he's opened up a can of worms. And Chris Matthews, if you saw that clip, because we did a story on it
I
this
watched
morning,
the whole thing last night.
He was apoplectic.
He was.
He's, why didn't he release it? And, he's creating the pressure. I think it's coming from Hillary. See, I think they know what I know.
They smell blood.
They smell blood. And very quietly they said, well, that's a smoking gun. This guy might be onto something. This Andy Martin could stir up a lot of flies there, by the honeypot. Mm-hmm. And of course, they won't admit that they're being fed by the Clintons but I think Clinton was measuring for drapes. In fact, Bill Clinton was probably closer to measuring for new drapes in the White House than I am.
Why? Because they stole the old ones?
They probably, these guys get in. They think they're kings. They're not king of the birthers, of course. I'm a real king. They think they're kings of them. They're in their own minds. But we came to New Hampshire to let people know we're in the primary. We're here. My mom was born in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Yes.
And this afternoon I'm going to place flowers at my grandparents' grave. They're buried down, I think it's Elm
Street?
On the Elm Cemetery, I think it's.
Pine Grove?
Pine Grove, exactly.
Pine Grove,
that's wrong kind of tree.
Okay, yeah.
So, I'm the last one of the Mohegans that actually knows how to find that gravestone.
Now your grandmother, or is it your mother, graduated from UNH?
Yeah, she was a UNH, class of 1940.
Okay, so your mother, yeah.
Yeah, and they were part of that immigrant community. You know, they came here basically 100 years ago.
Founding members of one of the Greek Orthodox churches,
Assumption Church, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they were very, very active in the and I grew up in New Hampshire as much as I grew up in Connecticut because we were always coming back for weddings and funerals, and the highlight of my young life was 2 weeks at Hampton Beach every summer.
Yes.
Because that was a tradition that had developed when the family was still in New Hampshire. And we would always come up here, and I would learn a foreign language, like tonics. What's a tonic? Well, that's soda. Oh. And all kinds of words, that they had up here. Yankee talk, I guess we call it.
Can't get there from here.
Oh, I tell you. So I'm going to have a tonic while I'm in Concord.
Okay.
And we're going to be campaigning all day. We'll be back. We're going to file. We're going to take this campaign nationally. Today is the beginning. And I'm happy to say that Obama's taking me very seriously. He has all of his Obama bots saying that I'm not eligible to be president. So if you've ever heard the pot calling the kettle black, that has to be, or the cat's meow, it's hilarious. But at the end of the day, here's the issue. The issue is that Obama's in the White House, not Brian Tilton or Andy Martin. He's the guy that has to move the first chip on the chessboard. He's the guy that has to come forward, release that, and release Occidental College, Punahou School, $20,000 a year in fees. His grandma was a vice president in a bank. She didn't earn a big salary. In those days, bankers didn't have derivatives to play, to kind of goose up the market. Banking was a lowly paid industry 50 years ago. And you sat there with a shirt and tie, but you didn't make any money. So where did they get $20,000 a year to send their grandson to Punahou? I mean, there are a lot of unanswered questions as to who funded this guy, and none of it ends up on the doorstep. And the saddest issue of all, and I think this is perhaps why Obama is sensitive, and I understand that. Today we call the children of unmarried parents non-marital children. Then we had a different word for them. Mm-hmm. And his parents were never legally married. Now, what the legal effect of that is, it means this whole marriage thing and married to Barack. How could a man have a legal marriage in one country, skip across the ocean, and marry another wife? And, that was in Kenya. But under British law, which Obama himself recognizes apply to his father, the United States of America recognized any marriage that was legal under British law.
Okay.
So
because Kenya was a British colony.
Yeah, now how about all these sisters that he uses for his photo ops in Canada and his brothers? He's never told them, hey, your mother's illegitimate, or my daddy never married your mommy. Of course, he couldn't do that. They'd run him out of Kenya. They know you see what they do to their political opposition in Kenya. And it doesn't involve holding a primary election.
Right, exactly.
So the bottom line is, he was married, he had a family in Kenya, and he comes here and he starts dropping babies across the United States. That's embarrassing. But it's nothing that we wouldn't forgive. This is the greatest country in the world because we forgive people, we overlook it. Nobody cares. What we care about...
Look at how many children are born to unwed parents today.
Exactly. We care about historical truth. If I could sit across the table, as I'm sitting across from you here in the studio at TPL, I'd say, look, nobody cares, Mr. President. They just want to know the truth. We know the facts. I mean, you've said that they're your brothers and sisters. Well, when did they get divorced in Kenya? How could you have a brother and sister in Kenya and they weren't married?
All right, 1-866-823-1077. That's Andy Martin, Republican candidate for President of the United States, making his announcement here on Bulldog Live on the Pulse, and we'll be happy to get to your calls as well here at 1-866-823-1077 as we do have some calls coming in. And let's go to Michael first, who wishes to join the conversation. Hi, Michael. Welcome to Bulldog Live. You're on with Andy Martin.
Thank you. Happy to be on.
All right, good.
My question for Mr. Martin is, beside the birther issue, what other issues is he for or against as a candidate for president?
Wow, Mike, thanks. Your $10 bill will be in the mail, and I appreciate the coordination. That's a great question, and I'd love to answer it. First of all, I want the Republican Party to start pushing back against Wall Street. Both political parties, Republicans and Democrats, are controlled from Lower Manhattan, from the Goldman Sachs building. You've got them buying politicians in both. President Bush, of course, had Mr. Paulson as the Secretary of Treasury, who was calling up and giving stock market tips to Goldman Sachs. Now you go in and you've got a guy, Geithner, who was the president, the Treasury Secretary. He was not at Goldman Sachs, but he was basically their little marionette, their puppet, their errand boy. So Goldman Sachs has controlled both parties, and the result is they're exporting our jobs to China. They're exporting the futures of our children to China, and neither party is really fighting it. Ironically, I give a lot of kudos, a lot of support to the United Steelworkers. I want to build within the Republican Party the Reagan umbrella again. Let's bring the United Steelworkers into the Republican Party. Let's say the Democrats sold you down the river and took away your jobs. We've been wrong on this. You know, a guy that I don't like, Senator Mark Kirk, who's a really Chinese stooge who was raising money for his race in Beijing. They're all pro-Chinese. Well, they're not pro-American anymore. It's all money. So we have the finest government in Washington money can buy. I want to put America first, American workers first, American families first, not Chinese families, not Chinese factories, not China. Why is it that we're refusing to manufacture things just to save a penny or 2 or 5 cents? Americans have got to start buying American, creating jobs for our young people, stop making fun of entry-level jobs, and create opportunity and employment. They've got to have that ladder again. So that's the most important thing, economic recovery. We're not going to have an economic recovery as long as we have this year the biggest bonuses in history on Wall Street. These investment bankers are playing with all these little pieces of paper that nobody can understand. They're carrying billions of dollars out the door, and Main Street is suffering. So if you wanted to reduce it to a line, I'm for Main Street, not Wall Street.
Well, what about smaller government and our constitutional rights?
Well, I absolutely believe in smaller government. My view is that we have much too much government, much too much bureaucracy. One of the lessons of 9/11, of course, 9/11, was that we had so many layers of government that they couldn't. The right hand literally didn't know what the left hand was doing. We need to be more nimble. We have a lot of good people. Let me just say that we've got a lot of very loyal, dedicated public servants in the federal government, particularly in the area of intelligence and military and counterintelligence. But they're being buried. How about that piece, I think it was last week, where the director of intelligence was on the Today Show and didn't even know that there had been a roundup of terrorists in London. So that's a result of all of the bureaucracy and all of we need a president that understands the intelligence community, that will work with them, and most of all, we need to work towards economic incentives as opposed to deficit spending and throwing money out the door for public employee subsidies. And
let me just do a follow-up on Michael's question. Second Amendment rights, for example.
I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. And, you know, it's interesting.
Even though you're from Chicago, where the Second Amendment doesn't exist.
Well, Mayor Daley's leaving office. Now we're going to get Rahm Emanuel. He'll probably disarm the police. Isn't it interesting that the states that are gaining congressional seats are the ones that are strong Second Amendment supporters? Texas, Florida, Arizona.
And they also have the lowest tax burdens, too, particularly no income taxes. With that, Michael, I got to run. Thank you very much for your call.
Good luck, Mr. Martin. Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty, 1-866-823-1077. We'll continue our conversation with Andy Martin here for a few more minutes before he has to run off to the state capitol and make his announcement and press conference there as well. Here on Bulldog Live with me, your host, Bulldog Brian Tilton, on The Pulse.
Bulldog Live will continue after these messages, live on The Pulse.
Bulldog Live here on The Pulse. Couple more minutes with Andy Martin before he has to run over to the State House and hold a press conference at the Legislative Office Building right behind the State House. And, I'm sure, Andy, people want to follow you around today. They're welcome to do so.
Absolutely. You know, this is, like I say, it's a lot of fun for me because as I go around, I point out things. Well, this is the place where I used to play, and this was the house where my aunt lived. And, of course, I was always a terror driving everybody nuts when I was 5 years old. And my excellent memories of Manchester go back 60 years. And the reason I remember it very vividly, I came to the funeral of the founding pastor of Assumption Church. And, you know, for a 5-year-old, this huge funeral with hundreds and hundreds of people, and all these people dressed up and this and that. I mean, I had no idea what a funeral was, but I was so vividly impressed by Father Pascal's funeral that it's never left me. And of course, I remember all kinds of things. Much of what I remember, of course, is gone now. They bulldozed it for urban progress, of course.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just amazing to come back here and see what opportunities America offers at its best. We are the greatest nation in the world. We are the shining city on the hill. We are the light, and we have so much to offer. And it's a pity that Barack Obama has forfeited that great opportunity. And I aim to be sure the Republican Party doesn't pull what I call a Grandpa McCain again, where he took a dive on all of these issues.
Well, he committed political suicide by suspending his campaign. But with that, Andy, I want to do have a caller on the line who wants to join in the conversation here. Kevin from Concord, you're on Bulldog Live, along with Andy Martin, Republican candidate for president.
Yes, good morning, Andy Martin.
Hi, Kevin.
Yes, question for you, actually, two questions. Where do you stand on the health care?
Whoa, I stand against it.
Okay.
I think they ought to repeal it and start. I'm not happy, by the way, with the Republican plan either. This business of interstate insurance companies and stuff like that. What I believe is that there's much too much complexity. You see, what we have today is a health system which is based on litigation defense and not taking care of patients.
Right.
And of course, Obama was built on socialism, not free market principles. But I'm not happy with either party. The Republicans had 8 years to do the job. They didn't do it. Now Obama came in and made a mess of it. So first we're going to have to, mop the floors of Obamacare. And then I'd like to see Republicans come back and do a really good job of simplifying it. To turn 65 years old in this country today is to have to get a bigger mailbox to take care of all the Medicare mailings and all the paperwork, hundreds and hundreds of pages of stuff they send you. So in my opinion, we repeal Obamacare, and then we hold the Republicans' feet to the fire, not just with these sort of free market nostrums about interstate stuff, because what difference does it make if you can buy your health coverage in Montana if they won't pay a claim in New Hampshire?
Okay.
But it should work. To me, the touchstone of a Martin presidency would be, does it work?
Okay.
Number two
is I'm a big. Number two is I'm a candidate. Well, not a candidate, but I'm a big fan of politics and campaigning. So you might see me on your campaign trail. Where's your headquarters going to be in New Hampshire?
I haven't got a clue yet. We'll find a place.
Okay.
It'll probably be in Manchester. That's just a guess.
That's where most of them end up being, yeah.
Yeah, but, you never know. We'll see what happens. We'll see what develops. Basically, I'd like to let lots of people open their own headquarters and make it a grassroots movement so that we're not driven by some Washington, the Obama bureaucracy, the legendary bureaucracy came out of Chicago. Usually my headquarters is in my briefcase. You can pick up the cell phone and you can get me on the phone. Brian knows this because he's called me.
Yeah.
And, he's had to take, anxiety medication afterwards because he actually got me on the phone without going through 27 call screeners. Is that Tilton or Bilton? Or is it Milton? Or is it Stilton like the cheese in England? It's
who's Bulldog? What does that mean?
Yeah. Are you with the Humane Society?
So when do they open up? Probably around the summertime, you're thinking?
Well, we're open for business now. We're going to have a website up later today, and we're hoping to produce a commercial, if not today, in mid-January. It's my next option opening for New Hampshire. And we're going to have a commercial on the air attacking Obama and also prodding the Republican candidates, my learned and distinguished opponents in this primary race, for them to also ask the tough questions and not just say that we need to have interstate purchases of health care, which is the latest mantra, which is absolutely meaningless in reality.
All righty. Well, thank you for your time.
You're welcome, and thank you. And get on the team. Let's take this country back from Goldman Sachs.
Kevin, thank you very much for your call. Appreciate it. All right, 1-866-823-1077. Minute and a half remaining before Andy's got to run here. You certainly have been involved in some campaigns before. You've also run some brilliant television and radio ads in your career. George W. Bush, let's talk about that one. What happened right here in New Hampshire during that primary?
Well, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I predicted that President Bush was obsessed with Iraq and would start a war, and nobody believed it. He's a nice, sweet, mild-mannered guy. But, the profile that we did of Obama was as good as the one we did on Bush, and I said, this man is obsessed with Iraq. He's going to start a war, and it's not the right policy. And by golly, we ran the ad saying Bush is going to start a war with Iraq. And Ari Fleischer, who was his press secretary then, probably went crazy. Jeb Bush, who I know well and consider kind of a casual friend, was absolutely angry. Oh, how could Andy do that? But it all turned out to be true. This mild-mannered, decent guy that we elected president, George Bush, ended up dragging us into Iraq when Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11, had nothing to do with attacking the United States. And he was just a neighborhood nuisance, but he certainly didn't deserve $1 trillion of America's tax dollars, all borrowed from China at the prevailing market interest rates to go start a war over there. So I may be tough, and I may favor special ops and CIA and all kinds of intelligence, but I don't favor jeopardizing or wasting the lives of our young men and women and our middle-aged men and women who are in the field grade officer positions and senior NCO positions. I don't believe we should jeopardize those precious resources on just silly missions. I want to get it right before we do it. Does it work? Asks you, will it work? I was in Baghdad, and I spent in and out most of 2003 there, and I was the most unpopular American in Baghdad because I said it isn't working the way they're doing it. They're going to have to change the approach. The whole thing is a mess. And when they captured Saddam and they were all doing high fives, I said, this is the start of the insurgency. When you look back, you read my columns on the internet, and you find that once again, Andy hit it on the bullseye because the insurgency really began after we captured Saddam Hussein. So I'm out there campaigning for president. I've got a stronger resume, actually, as indeed many ordinary Americans would, than any of these blow-dried candidates that are out there running for president as Republicans or Democrats. So we're going to give them hell, as Harry Truman once said. And as you also said, I tell the truth and they think it's hell.
Well,
and that's Andy Martin in a nutshell.
Well, I want to direct people to andymartin.com and click on the biography to find out all the work that you have done on consumer issues and fighting corruption, taking out Supreme Court justices of all things. But also andymartinforpresident.com is going to be up.
It'll be up later
soon.
this afternoon. And it'll have the Sean Hannity appearance where I predicted that Obama was a socialist and got the Obama people attacking me.
They still are.
It has the film in pieces that I produced in Honolulu. The first guy and only guy that's really spent a lot of time there. Out in Honolulu, they think I'm a Kama'aina. I'm one of the Barack Obama and I are really long lost cousins.
Well, very good. Andy Martin, look forward to chatting with you again real soon, and good luck with your press conference coming up at 11 o'clock at the Capitol building.
Aloha, as we say, and as Governor Abercrombie would say. I guess I'm heading back to Honolulu to get him to pry loose that. What is that? What is it that Charlton Heston used to say, from my cold, dead hands? The birth certificate of Barack Obama.
Since Governor Abercrombie is looking for legal advice on how to get rid of that, how to put out the birth certificate, or quote unquote more information, as he said, can you offer him any?
Absolutely. All you do is sign an executive order and say he's the President of the United States. It's a historical archive, and I'm making an executive decision that any information in the archives of the state of Hawaii shall hereby and are hereby ordered to be made public forthwith on payment of a reasonable fee for copying. That's it.
There you go.
It's the historical record of the President of the United States. He's there in the White House. He's 44, as they call him at the Washington Post. So pretending that he's a private citizen with the same privacy rights as our callers on the radio, our people at the supermarket downtown who are going to jump into them at the Walmart. No, he doesn't have those same rights. He's got to tell us the truth. President Obama, today, turn a new leaf. Tell us the truth. Andy Martin is coming for you in the primaries. You better be ready for a cat fight. And all I want you to do is tell the truth.
Very good. Andy Martin, thank you very much.